And that is this courage gap I talk about. It's the gap between who we are and who we could be if we risked being brave and backed ourselves more often.
What's going on, Mel?
Not much.
You remember that movie Field of Dreams?
Yes. Oh, I love that movie.
It's such a good movie.
Yeah.
And I rewatched it. Bawled my eyes out.
It gets you in the feels.
It gets you in the feels. It's such a great movie.
It's a great movie. It's an inspirational movie.
It's a very inspirational movie.
Different feeling when you watched it the first time to now.
I think I watch that movie like every 10 years randomly. And every year I feel like I've taken something completely different from it. This time I got super wrecked when the doctor crossed the line to help the kid. And then Ray Liotta's character was like, hey kid, you were good. I fucking lost it. Jeff and I were like, what? And Enzo's like, where's he going? Like, it's just, yeah, it's so good.
I love that you're showing all these classics to Enzo too. All right. Well, hey, friends. This week we had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Margie Warrell, a leadership advisor and executive coach, a keynote speaker, a best-selling author. She wrote The Courage Gap, which is out now, and also You've Got This. She's the host of Live Brave podcast, guest lecturer at Georgetown University, and a courage catalyst is what she likes to say. And we were introduced to Dr. Margie through her recent article in Forbes, letting women know as DEI is canceled, more women need to own their worth and not prove it. And the Courage Gap talks about 5 different steps that you can take to take braver action in your life. And that's what we talked about. Francesca, what did you love about this episode?
I feel like for all the strides women have made, and women before us, women before them, we still have a lot of gaps that we're trying to close, from CEO titles, VP titles, pay, you name it. We're still on this journey. Some of that journey comes down to big changes like policy, but a lot of it comes down to these daily interactions or these daily moves that you make for yourself that can be really courageous. And so I was really interested in talking with her about it, and I loved what she had shared with us.
One of the biggest takeaways for me in the discussion was we all have these goals and things that we're aspiring to do, and it's hard to dream sometimes or express your dreams. And my favorite quote from her was, be selective in who you share your dreams with, because some people might throw a cold bucket of water on it, and you don't want that to happen.
I also love that she shared the 5 key things to have more courage for women and for men. They're very hyper practical. I'm not going to spoil it for folks. You have to listen to the episode. There are things that we can all be doing now to have more courage, especially at work, right? It can feel very hard to speak up. Sometimes it can feel hard to stand up for yourself or to dream big, like you talked about. And those are those exact moments when you should.
You should. That's what I loved about her article. And that's what I loved about this episode. It's really getting us through overcoming our fear when we make fear-based decisions. And especially as women, we probably feel like, ooh, we just took 20 steps backwards. So now we need to work even harder. But that's not what we should be doing, according to Margie. We need to own what we already bring to the table. Yeah. So with that, here's Dr. Margie Warrell. Hi, Margie.
Good to be with you.
Good to have you with us. Recently, you wrote an article in Forbes noting that as DEI is getting canceled everywhere, women need to own their worth and stop proving it. So we'd love to hear from you why it's more critical than ever to discuss this topic.
Oh, I wrote that article because I have always believed that as women, we are our own greatest source of strength and elevation, even when the systems around us aren't supporting us. And as we've seen the firing or the cancellation of DEI in many spheres, I think that women are finding themselves feeling a little disheartened and demoralized, and some feel like they're having to prove themselves all over again. So we can't wait for systems or other people to elevate us. We have to elevate ourselves. And yeah, we could point fingers and we can lay blame and we can complain about it. But I think at the end of the day, the most effective thing we can do is starting with ourselves and backing ourselves and operating from a place of owning our value fully.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just reading another article today in Inc. magazine. I don't know if you've seen that one yet, where someone just recently did a deep dive of Google searches. So what people do in the privacy of their own home when they're researching male CEOs versus female CEOs. And for male CEOs, it's all about compensation, all the keywords that come up. And for female CEOs, compensation is one keyword, but the remaining keywords by 1,650% is related to who is their husband, who is their family, are they a mother, which I found really interesting. What do you think about that?
I just think it shows that there's a long way to go until there's a genuinely level playing field. I think another one is like when we get to the day when we don't blink for a man to be the caregiver at home, and that's not anything to be, oh, she's got a house husband. That's actually something that we raise our eyebrows about. And I was just with someone the other day, and she is out in America from Australia, Taryn Bromford, and she was saying how her husband is at home with their 4 teenagers. And we sat there as women having dinner. This is 2 nights ago, saying, good for him. That's great. How's he going? How's he managing it all? And she's going, good job. And I had 4 children too. And whenever my husband was left with 4 children, we would go, good for him. Like, he's managing okay. That's great. But never in the history of ever did anyone ever say to a man whose wife was at home with 4 kids going, oh, how is she managing? That's good that she let you go away. That's great. So there's just such this double standard. And so, yes, when it's a woman, we're like, oh, what's her situation? Does she have children? And I just think it speaks to the double standards, but also our own curiosity of how women who rise to senior ranks manage to do. Do they have children? Do they have a husband at home? And just recognizing that we all bring some level of sometimes our own bias and fascination with that, because I think we just got a long way to go until that's just not something that's of any more interest.
Yeah, I can't wait for the day. DEI is just under a microscope right now, unfortunately. How do you feel this is specifically impacting women in the workplace? You touched a little bit on, now I feel like I have to prove myself all over again. I can relate to that. I'm sure we all can. How else is this impacting women in the future?
Look, there's some women who say, and some responded to my Forbes column saying, look, I don't feel I have to prove myself and I'm good. And I don't honestly feel this has affected me. So I want to just say that out the front. Okay. But I also know, because I get to work with a lot of women in my work who are saying, yeah, like there's been a shift in the winds. Even unspoken, there's this shift in the winds. And there is a little bit of, did you get to this place because you're a woman? How much of that was because of your gender? And if you're a woman of color, even more so. Are you only here because, and if you're a woman of color who is LGBTQ, even more so. Oh, is that why you are where you are? And so I think any woman who already has a little self-doubt, whoever has a little imposter syndrome, and I rarely meet a woman who doesn't have moments of that, I think it just adds like water onto the seeds of doubt. Am I here because of that? Now, I'm not saying everyone feels that. I don't feel that at all. I have never thought I've got anywhere because I'm a woman. But I know there are some that do feel a little bit like they have to prove themselves to be more than worthy of that spot. They have to work extra hard and do an extra good job. And let's face it, there are real biases. We know women are judged more harshly on performance, and when women make a mistake, it costs them more than when men make a mistake. So it's not like this is all just made up and in our minds. There is realities there too. It has left some women feeling like they do have to prove themselves, and maybe they're doubting themselves a little more too.
Okay.
Your article struck me. I consider myself a relatively confident person. And honestly, it's a very interesting to feel like 45 and I'm still feeling this sense of am I worthy? I have to continually prove myself constantly. You're only as good as your last success. And I am curious about why you think women feel this way.
I think there's multiple factors that contribute to women feeling that way. But I think if we just go all the way back to our childhoods and where we were raised, when I did my PhD dissertation, I did it on women who had reached the C-suite in multinational corporations. And so I did a lot of interviews with women who had reached these positions of significant positional power and authority and influence. And what was really interesting, and I was looking at what are the defining features, what are the defining characteristics and mindsets of women who've reached that spot. And there was a host of them. But often they came from an environment where they had someone who believed in them and said, you've got what it takes. A lot of them said they never ever vaguely thought about being in the C-suite. That wasn't on their horizon. But they also had someone who they had experiences that helped to build like a little bit of grit and resilience up in them. And they didn't let what other people said be overly defining of them. Like when people would say, oh, you're just there because you're pretty or whatever, like they were pretty resilient and what I would call anti-fragile. But I think we've got to recognize not everyone grows up in some environment where they do feel empowered and they're emboldened and they develop real grit and resilience and anti-fragility. And a lot of women grow up in environments with a lack of female role models, without people who are championing them, saying, absolutely, you can do anything you want. You're 45, I'm 10 years on you. I grew up without any female role models, without anyone saying, you can do anything you want. And so I was way in my 30s and even 40s where I'm like, oh, I'm just as capable as these people over here, with that lack of belief. And so I think we don't always grow up with the same, surrounded and immersed in the same belief systems that we can do and be anything we want. We may intellectually know it's not true. We may intellectually know that we are just as capable and just as clever, but there's often these little lingering doubts in the back of our head that are going, who do you think you are? And when are people going to realize you're not that good? And that's not to say that men don't also sometimes experience that, but it's more pervasive among women. And while I'd like to think the needle has changed in the last 30, 40 years, I have a daughter who's 25. She has entered the workforce at a time that's really different to than when I entered the workforce. But I still sometimes see it like, oh, I don't know if I should do that. I'm thinking, why not? Of course you can. And I find myself saying that. Mind you, I sometimes still say that to my sons as well. So I'm not sure that she's got more doubt than my sons, but I still see women sometimes holding themselves back more than the barriers around them.
Yeah. Those tapes that we have, those are hard ones to take out, especially the voices in your head. I am curious if you don't have somebody that's saying you do have what it takes, or having a mentor that brings you along, that sees something in you. What can somebody do on their own to start feeling that they can own it, or they do have value, that they shut off those tapes? What are some things that really help?
I would say seek out people who inspire you. Whether you'll get a book and read about Madeleine Albright, get a book and read about, insert some woman that you find just fascinating and inspiring, whoever that may be, whether that's Angela Merkel or Oprah or whatever, because when we read those stories, we can see a little of ourselves in their story. And man, they overcame that. Like, gee, yeah, they've got strengths and gifts that maybe are different to yours, but I think just that one, seek out in person the kind of women that you'd like to get to know better. Surround yourself, go out and go to a conference where you're going to meet those people and connect with those people. Join an organization where you get to meet those people. I have to say myself, time and time again, it has been the example of other women who go, oh, honey, you got this. Or like they'll say stuff and they don't have to know me really well, but I'm like, I love what they see. And they may be 15 or 20 years ahead of me, or maybe they're 10 years younger than me, but it's still affirming. I would also say to be really intentional about the relationships that you invest in, but also those that you don't invest in, those that may be playing you small. And sometimes that can be friends. Like
Be your family too. Yeah.
that can be our frenemies. It can be our family. And you might not just be able to cut yourself off from family. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that you should. I've got family members who I'm like, you know what? I don't even tell them about some of the things I'm up to because I know they will just pour a big bucket of cold water on it. They are only going to feed my doubts. When I told my family I was writing my first book, which is quite a few years ago, and I was nervous about doing it because my family it's in Australia, there's something called the tall poppy syndrome. And it's this cultural phenomena where if you aspire to raise too far above your current level, you run a significant risk of being cut down like a tall poppy that's standing out from all the rest. And the culture I grew up in rural Australia was strong with this. And I remember sharing with my family, it was Christmas, and I said to everybody, what's something everyone wants to do in the next 12 months? And one sister said, I want to go into South America. And my brother wanted to do his MBA. And my mother said she'd like to volunteer more. For her, that was a big, bold thing. I'd like to volunteer more. And then it got around all my siblings. There were 6 siblings and parents. And they said, what do you want to do in the next 12 months? And I said, I'd like to write the outline for a book. Like, I didn't even say I wanted to write a book. I just like to write the outline. I had 4 kids, 6 and under at the time. And my brother, I have 3, so I'm not going to name which one.
Everybody knows who he is. I'm just kidding.
He immediately said, what are you going to write a book about? And it was just like, I didn't need that. Like I already had that going in my head. Who am I to write a book? And I didn't need him to go, what are you going to write a book about? And I said, like how to be more confident and to go after what we really want to go after in our lives. And I could just see him like going, oh, okay. And the conversation moved on. And so I would just say it could be family that you need to set some rails on. Don't share with them your little seedlings of ambition if you think they're going to jump all over them. And it could be your mother, and it could be actually your best friend, because maybe that's threatening to her because she's not doing it. So just be careful who you share your aspirations with, particularly in the early days when it's just a little tiny seedling that's still germinating. And you've got so much doubt yourself. You don't know yourself whether or not you have what it takes. So the last thing you need is someone else to jump on that wagon and go, but how are you going to do that? That could be really hard. 60% of small business owners fail. Like, how are you going to manage that with 3 young children or whatever it is? As I said, I have 4 children. I remember thinking about having a 4th child. And how can I ever have a 4th child and pursue a career? I did not know one woman who had 4 children a career. It just speaks to that I had a pretty limited environment. I didn't know anyone. And I had one girlfriend who said, you can totally do it. I know a woman who has 4 children. And then she started finding examples for me of others. And I clung to those examples. It can be done. And to give myself permission not to know exactly how I do it, but to figure it out as I went along. That was very empowering for me to go, okay, I'm going to now allow the possibility for it to happen, which to me actually was an act of courage because I was a little terrified that I would not manage the juggling act.
Yeah. I love that. It's an act of courage to move forward and keep on moving forward. I also like the inverse of that is the friend or the person that's going to be like, yeah, go. You can do this. You've got this. Listening to those stories, especially from women that are telling you to go and keep going, is huge.
Yeah. No, yes. And I think sometimes we give away our power to the opinions of others too quickly, too readily, too often. And when I say give away our power, we let what other people might think matter way more than is serving us. Do you think this is a good idea? Do you think I can do this? What will people think if I try this? Maybe they'll think I'm a little crazy. Who am I to do it? And I say, hold your own opinion in higher esteem than you hold the opinion of others. That doesn't mean you shouldn't seek out counsel and you shouldn't seek out other people's perspectives, but don't let anyone else's opinion override your own opinion. They've got their opinions, and maybe there's some value in them, and maybe they have some things that will broaden what you're considering and help you think about things a little more rigorously or consider things you mightn't have considered. But at the end of the day, you've got to trust yourself and trust your gut and trust your own intuition. Just be careful how much power you give to what other people think you should and shouldn't do.
What I'd love to talk about are the unique strengths women do bring to business, because I think there are unique strengths we bring, like intuitiveness. It's not to say men don't have that, but I feel like women might have that unique strength. One of the organizations Francesca and I follow is Pink Chip, which follows the success of female CEOs and how they're significantly outperforming male CEOs in terms of business success for varying reasons. So when you think about the leadership strengths or the unique leadership strengths women bring to business success, what are those unique strengths that we bring?
Women obviously have a strong, our brains are wired this way, but just to be able to empathize with what's going on for others, not just intellectually understand what they think, but to be able to really sense and feel what they feel. And we know that emotions drive action, not logic. And I think women bring a real gift and strength, and some more than others, obviously, at being able to empathize with what's going on for others so they can form really authentic connection with people at that deeper level. I think women often aren't as settled with a sense of needing to prove their strength and be tough. I'm generalizing, but so there's less ego often running the show. It's what is it that it feels like the right thing to do here versus what's going to make me look strong and look tough. I think women are naturally good at building bridges and gaining collaboration. And because I think we're less captive to an ego that has to prove how good we are and how strong we are, we're able to get around defensiveness at times and get underneath it and to connect with people at a meaningful, in an authentic way that sometimes men can't, because there's a little more posturing and proving, and I call it pissing competitions without getting too crude. I'm bigger than you. My shoe's bigger than your shoe. And I'm like, seriously, what's the outcome you're trying to achieve here? And how can you go about working together to get a better outcome versus making it about you and your big ego and needing to prove that you're better than that person? I think on multiple different ways, women bring many strengths. Another in the research shows, yes, men tend at times to be more willing to wing it. So they can be quicker to sometimes just jump in and take a risk, but they also can do more dumb, stupid things faster as well. And so women tend to be a little more considered, a little more thoughtful about, is this a good, I know it doesn't mean women won't take risks, but they'll go about it a little more thoughtfully. They won't jump in, test the water with 2 feet. They'll go, okay, let's test the depth of the water with 1 foot before we jump in with 2 feet. And so on multiple different areas, the study that came out of Harvard of the 19 key strengths of leadership, women were stronger on 17. So I'm not going to list 17, but there is many ways that women bring those strengths to the table. And that's not to say that men don't bring a lot of strengths too. To me, this isn't about women are better than men. I feel really strongly about that. I don't like the saying, the future is female. I hope not. I really hope not. I hope that the future is just more collaborative of men and women on an equal playing field, partnering to make better decisions and get better outcomes. Because we need the strengths, the feminine leadership strengths, masculine leadership strengths, and we need them to be in collaboration together. And so I think it's important that that gets recognized, and this isn't about one or the other, one better than, worse than. I do think there's situations where men's strengths may be more suited for that specific situation, maybe that company in this industry in this moment in time. But yes, as you're talking about pink chip companies, obviously women are exceptionally good at what they do, make excellent leaders and can produce excellent outcomes, and really good at being inclusive. And I think harnessing the diversity within teams, and diversity on all measures. Mm-hmm. Diversity isn't just about gender, and it's not just about race, or it is on all measures. Women are really good at being able to harness that value of diversity in all forms in the teams that they are leading, that they're part of.
Yeah, it sounds ideal state. The future is balanced across it all.
Get your opinion on this because this is not a political statement. I'm going on objective reporting here. There's a lot of talk in the ether around masculine energy. And I'm curious about when it feels like in a lot of corporate America, the masculine energy is taking over. What's your point of view on how women operate now in corporate America? Like, what's the move?
Stand your ground. Stand tall in your power and your worth. And given there may be a sense that the winds are shifting a little bit, don't let people play you small. We teach people how to treat us. And I think at times that means we need to push back and call things out. And that may not be natural. I know for myself, my natural state is not combative. It's not argumentative. It tends to be very accommodating and maybe a little bit too acquiescent to other people's, what other people would like, etc. But I know at times when I've been in a situation where I feel like someone is trying to dominate here. They're trying to claim an idea that's mine. They're trying to maybe take advantage of my agreeableness, that sometimes I need to lean in and speak up and act in ways that aren't my natural. It's not my default, and go, sorry, excuse me, I haven't finished what I was saying. If you would just give me a moment, we can go over to you once I finished. And like, versus just letting someone cut in, right? Or someone's taking your idea going, I just want to just step back a bit for a moment. I actually suggested that yesterday, and not doing it in a way that's derogatory, but we stand firm in our own power and our own value and our worth. And we make sure people know that we won't be pushed over, because I think we do get what we tolerate. And sometimes we tolerate things to avoid conflict, to avoid an awkward, difficult moment, to avoid coming across as being, God, she's hard work or she's sensitive. And yet over time, you're like, okay, people will take advantage of that. As I wrote about in this book, The Courage Gap, how do we cultivate our capacity to take brave action? Fear constricts our actions that we take, and courage expands the actions that we take. And it's about expanding your behavioral repertoire. No, I'm not a naturally combative person, but can I be combative if I need to be? Can I be strident and really assert myself into something? Yeah, you bet I can. And I don't want to do that all the time, but I can lean in and do that when I need to, or ask for my worth, or make sure my voice is heard and speak with the authority that's needed. And so practicing that. And I do think it takes practice. If you're someone who tends to be a little bit more diminutive, you don't need your voice heard, you're happy not to say anything in a meeting unless you have something compelling to say, I would say no. Practice injecting your voice into that meeting. Practice speaking up with a little more volume or a little more depth. Practice standing a little taller. Practice you being first to ask a question or to put forward an idea, even though you're not 100% sure how it's going to land. Like, practice that. It's a muscle that you build, and you've got to put in those reps.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And I love it's those moments where you need to stand your ground.
And I actually think in these times when you could rationalize why, pull your head in and don't do it, I believe it is in times like this when we can find the most reasons to be a little timid, a little cautious, to play it safe, that our voice is most needed, and we are most called to step up, speak up, and really claim our place.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this, but when you say bet on yourself, like in one sentence, what does that truly mean? You could do 2 sentences. I don't want to give you limits, but
act in ways that affirm that you have everything it takes to achieve your wildest vision of success.
Okay. I want to put that on a mug. No.
But when I say back yourself, like back yourself and not your doubts. Act in ways that show that you expect good things to come your way and that you're going to do your part. If the universe is conspiring for you, are you doing 100% of your part to set yourself up for those great things to happen? Like, you've got to do your part. You've got to be putting yourself out there. You've got to be taking the risks. You can't expect amazing things to happen while you're playing it safe. You've got to take the risk, take the chance, and make that bet on yourself.
I have curiosity. Do you feel like most people need to be grounded in like knowing that you have a higher self or knowing that you're here to do something? Is there a higher purpose thing going on here as well?
You're saying, does belief in something that's bigger than ourselves help us show up in the world as more of who it is, who we can be? I think that's maybe
much more articulately stated. Yes, thank you.
And I get it. There's some people who go, I don't believe in God. I'm not religious. I'm not spiritual, whatever. And I would just say this. If you ever say, oh, I believe in karma, then you're believing in some force that's bigger than yourself. If you say the universe, you're believing in some force that's bigger than yourself. If you believe in what goes around comes around, you're believing in something that's bigger than yourself. I actually am a Christian, so I absolutely believe in something that's bigger than myself. But regardless of whether you have any religious belief at all, you can still believe that who you are is more than the body that you're in and more than the brains that you've got and more than your current emotional state. And yes, I believe that we are all here to fulfill a purpose that leaves the world a little bit better off because we walked on it for 80, 90 years. I believe that. Does that compel me to be brave at times when I really don't want to be? Yes, it does. But even if you don't believe that, there is something that is immensely empowering to believe that you are innately worthy by the virtue of the fact that you are in the world and that you have innate worth to bring to others around you. And you cannot bring that in all its force and all its glory if you are second guessing yourself. Because when you doubt yourself, you don't only do yourself a disservice, you shortchange, I believe, the whole world. But you certainly shortchange all those people around you of who it is you can be. And that is this courage gap I talk about. It's the gap between who we are and who we could be if we risked being brave and backed ourselves more often.
How can we enable people to close that courage gap, especially women? What can we be doing as bosses, as peers? I think organizationally, what would you say to that?
When I look at leadership, and I think of it as three domains of the I, the we, and the it: personal leadership, interpersonal leadership, and enterprise leadership, our organization, our business, our team, etc. What can we be doing? I just wrote a book on that. So buy my book, Courage Gap. Shameless plug, but hey, if
we're going to plug it again at the end.
So that's what I wrote the book about. Number one, I'm just going to really quickly just say 5 quick things. Number one, focus on what it is that you want. What's the outcome you want for yourself? What's the outcome you want for others? What's the outcome you want for your team, your organization? Get really clear about that. And what are the values that underpin who you need to be, how you need to show up to move toward that vision of what you want. Because your vision for what you want, your commitment to that has to be bigger than the fears of what you don't want. Otherwise, fear's going to govern. Yeah. Number 2, challenge the story that you're telling yourself. Our beliefs are the software of behavior. And so often we're operating from a narrative. Oh, I don't think I've got what it takes. Oh, I'm not sure I'm ready. Oh, I need to have a bit more skill, knowledge. Oh, what will people... No. What is the belief that you need to operate from for you to achieve what it is you want to achieve, to become the woman that you know you have it within you to become? What is the belief system? So re-script what's keeping you stuck or stressed or having you living a little too safely. Number 3, embody courage. Take a breath, stand tall, put your shoulders back. Like, how we hold ourselves physically matters. In fact, there was a study out of Kellogg Business School that found that how we hold ourselves physically shifts our perception of our own power and agency, but it also shifts how others see us. When you walk in a room, like you own that room and you sit down like you absolutely belong there, it shifts how other people perceive you, but it starts with how you perceive yourself. Number 4, make friends with discomfort. And if you can't make friends with it, at least make a truce with it, that you are going to get uncomfortable as often as need be, because you cannot become who you want to be and do what you want to do and create a psychologically safe environment around you if you're only ever being comfortable yourself. You've got to be willing to do the very awkward things. And from a management and leadership perspective, when it comes to fostering what I call a culture of courage, and I have spoken to Amy Edmondson, who coined the term psychological safety, on my Live Brave podcast a few times, the two go hand in hand. They're the two sides of the same coin. We cannot foster a psychological safety if we're not willing to be vulnerable. If we're not willing to say, I messed up, or I don't know, or what might I have got wrong here, or invite feedback. So you've got to be role modeling that, but start with making friends with that discomfort and doing the very things that scare you. Every day, do a little thing. Go, I'm going to do something every day that's a little uncomfortable. And the more often we do that, we build that muscle. And number 5, be a little kinder to yourself when you mess up, because you're human.
Yeah.
You're human. And without knowing you really well, Mel or Francesca, I'm going to guess that today you were not as brilliant and brave and wonderful and organized and disciplined and patient with your children or whatever as you'd love to be. And that is the human condition. We are never going to be all things all the time. But when we can be a little kinder to ourselves and extend a little more grace inward, when we either try something and we balls it up, or when we hold back and we're like, oh, shit, I know I should reach out and have that conversation, but oh God, I can't. I just can't. I'm just not doing it today. Like when our inner Chicken Little gets the better of us, like just be kind to yourself and go, okay, because we're not going to risk being brave if we beat up on ourselves every time we fall. And we are a lot braver and we show up as a bigger version of ourselves when we can embrace that we are fallible and we are flawed and we are not always going to be fearless.
That's a good
It's
vibe.
a good vibe, though.
Yeah, that's a good vibe. All right.
All right.
Mel.
We are closing things out with rapid round. So, Margie, this is what we like to just get to know you a little bit better one-on-one, get your thoughts outside of just this topic. Are you game for us to dive right in?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. It's 2030. What's work going to look like?
Ooh, I think we're going to see more fluid, purpose-driven work environments. I think the need that really was underscored during the pandemic, that people are looking for meaning. They want to work for organizations that reflect their values. I think we're going to see more and more of that, people prioritizing purpose and meaning over titles, that also value flexibility over formality. I think we're going to see more of that, and a greater desire for real authenticity as distinct from that sort of posturing and looking good, that people really want to see people being really human. As technology and Gen AI takes on a bigger role, that human touch is going to be even more sought after and valued.
Okay.
Totally agree.
Yes, we're on the same page. What music are you listening to right now?
Oh my goodness. I have a fairly broad repertoire. I often listen to just 80s classics.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yes.
I go back. I still love John Denver and Neil Diamond, but I love Ed Sheeran and I love Pink. So I just got this broad one. I love Lauren Daigle. There's a lot of people I like listening to. I love Kelly Clarkson. So needless to say, I'm broad.
What are you reading right now or listening to podcasts yourself?
Podcasts. I really like Ezra Klein. I listen to him, but I actually listen to a broad spectrum of people on podcasts. I like 10% Happier.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a weird one to say. Joe Rogan. I listen to Joe Rogan. I find him really interesting, though I do often fast forward through it, and I do little bursts of Mel Robbins.
Okay. All right. Who do you really admire?
Who do I really admire? I did admire my mum, who passed away 18 months ago,
I'm so sorry.
because she had such a beautiful, humble, gentle serene way about her. She was all about service and never about ego. So I'm just going to stop there.
Okay. What's one piece of advice you want everyone to know?
Oh, do not wait until you feel brave to do the brave thing.
I love it. Thank you for being here, Dr. Margie. We really appreciate it. And we do want to plug the Courage Gap 5 Steps to Braver Action because that just came out. So please do check it out. And Margie, how can our listeners connect with you for ongoing insights and resources on this topic?
Oh, thank you. They can find me on social media, LinkedIn, anywhere, though I'm not very active on TikTok, but Insta, I am there. They can go to my website, margiewarrell.com, and take my courage quiz on the book page, sign up for my newsletter. And I also have my own Live Brave podcast that is everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yes, we are following it, by the way. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being here.
It was awesome to speak with you both. And I just want you two to just keep backing yourselves because you're doing great work in the world.
This episode was produced, edited, and all things by us, myself, Mel Plett, and Francesca Ranieri. Our music is by Pink Zebra. And if you loved this conversation and you want to contribute your thoughts with us, please do. You can visit us at yourworkfriends.com, but you can also join us over on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn community page, and we have the TikToks and Instagrams. So please join us in the socials. And if you like this and you've benefited from this episode and you think someone else can benefit from this episode, please rate and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. That helps keep us going.
Take care, friends.
Right. Bye, friends.
Bye, friends.